Right, how are we doing, everybody, and welcome to Russell Heritage Golf. Today going to be talking about the separation, right? So basically over the last kind of week now, I've been talking a lot about the hips, talked about the importance of the backswing position first. I talked very much about the importance that we create a rotation, we turn into the hip, okay? We put pressure into the floor. That's a really big thing, that you understand that you're supposed to actually engage with the floor beneath you and get a feeling that you're really putting pressure down in towards the ground. I then started to talk about the transition, and then once you get the load in this side, then that means that you can start to pull the lead hip back onto the same plane that you kind of internally rotate your right hip onto, which basically I just wanted to talk about today again, just to make sure that everybody's getting the right sort of idea. When you turn correctly in the backswing, what it will do is it will eliminate things like a slide, an incorrect rotation, where I see a lot of golfers turn over towards this onto the actual leg itself rather than into the hip. I see a lot of golfers that tend to drift, you know, where they start to move forward closer towards the ball to target line in the backswing position. And all of these things are created because of an incorrect hip rotation in the backswing position. Arguably, if you're somebody who drifts, it could be a little bit of postural as well. But generally speaking, if you can kind of govern what the hips are doing and you have a decent hip rotation in the backswing, it gives you the chance to work on the separation, what again we're talking about again today. So if I take my position up to the top, and this is something that you want to do at home or next time you're down the driving range, is you kind of want to swing up towards the top. You want to feel like you're putting a lot of pressure underneath your trail foot. And the question you want to ask yourself is, can you actually create separation? And what this means is, here you can see, as I demonstrate it from face on, the way I can keep my upper body facing in the direction where it is in terms of the backswing, and then I can slowly start to open up my lower body. And again, same from this side on perspective. If I can turn up towards the top, and you can see the way my right shoulder doesn't move, so I'm not moving this direction, right shoulder doesn't move, as I'm able to kind of reopen my hips. If you can't, right, and some of you will find it more difficult, some of you will find it quite comfortable and easy. If you can't do it, there's a general indication that it's probably because you're getting the backswing position wrong first and foremost. So if I kind of turn too much over onto this side and I try and pull my left hip back, all of a sudden it becomes much more of a stretch for me to be able to do it. So if you can turn correctly in the backswing, it will give you the ability to separate. Now, if you're somebody who is, let's say, hugely unflexible, or let's say you're somebody who has, you know, trouble with the spine and around the hip, so you can't create a degree of separation, then what I'll talk about is I'll do some video content on what golfers should do if you're less flexible in more detail in the future. But the biggest problem really, and we've known this for some time, is when the right hip starts to fire forward. Okay, so if the right hip starts to fire forward, this is why we used to get taught information to create more of a lateral movement at the start of the downswing. But we don't want that, because as I've already mentioned, when you start getting slidey, you start getting stuck and you start getting flippy or out of sequence. So we're trying to operate on an optimum sort of rotational based golf swing, because in my opinion, that's how you're going to get the most amount of consistency in your game. But if you couldn't create that separation, then all you would do is, when you turn back, you would just make more of a conscious effort to bring your arms down in front of that right hip, because at least then you can kind of still adhere to getting the club on plane. The worst place to be, like I say, is when you start firing this forward, because what it's going to do is it's going to shove you over the top, or you're going to compensate by kind of dropping the club down, creating more of a down cocking move earlier, and then you're going to struggle with things like contact and consistency with club path at the bottom part of the swing. So what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to create a degree of separation, which again, that simple little exercise, swing up to the top, support your trail shoulder. Can you open up the lower body? If you can, then happy days, that means you're in a decent position. If you can't, then experiment with the backswing position until you feel like you're really turning into that hip and it gives you a degree of separation. Now, when I teach people over time and through a little bit of manipulation of just helping them get a feel for a correct hit sequence, majority of the time people can create a separation. What then happens is that actually, once you understand, right, like any other side on sport, that you are trying to create a sense of opening, right? If we're playing tennis and you hit the ball over the net towards me, I would open up my stance, which gives me the chance to hit the ball. If you were passing me the football, I would create space so I can kick the ball. Never at any of these side-on sports would you encroach the ball, you know, in terms of the space, because then you get stuck and you wouldn't be able to execute with as much force as you would like. So what starts to happen in a lot of these other side-on sports, when I ask people to do things like, you know, throw a ball or demonstrate some sort of baseball swing, is they actually start to create a degree of kind of, I suppose, disassociation, which means that actually, as they're still going back, in terms of as they're still kind of turning, if you like, the upper part of the spine, if you like, the shoulders, they actually start to kind of open up the lower body. So if you were throwing a ball, it would look like this. As I'm going back, you would step and open. If you were doing a baseball swing, as you're going back, you would step and open. And I know a lot of those sports are probably a little bit more easier to kind of picture, but in golf, it's amazing. Once you understand that actually what you're supposed to do is swing up to the top and then start to open up the lower body to create space, and you actually understand how to do it as well, and not only the importance of it, then actually it amazes me how many people start to naturally create that disassociation in the transition between the top of the backswing and the start of the downswing. Now, it's not for everybody, and it's not absolutely paramount that you do it, but that's what we're talking about. What we see with the pros is that as they're swinging up, right, so as I keep completing the top of my backswing, as before they reach the climax of the backswing position, they actually start to open up the lower body there. And I suppose what I would suggest is, first and foremost, your separation is key. Right, your separation and independently being able to move the lower body stops doing things like coming over the top, and it stops things like an early hip extension. So it's worthwhile doing it slowly and doing that drill that I mentioned earlier where you just support that right shoulder. But over time, what I would start experimenting with is exactly the same as what you do with any other side on sport, is actually to start getting a feeling like you are unraveling the lower body as you're still getting towards the climax of the top of the backswing. And as you do this, it will start to feel a little bit more kind of natural and maybe a little bit more kind of fluid. For some of you, it will just feel hard to coordinate and it will just get you out of sequence. For some of you, it's definitely worth experimenting, because at least you're going to know one way or another. What will happen, say for our more flexible golfers, is that you'll find it easier to create a larger rate of rotation of the lower body. And if you start to do that, then you'll do something that I've discussed on the channel before, where as I start my downswing, as I start to rotate my lower body, what you can start to see happens is that it creates like a bend in the spine, and it starts to induce what's known as a lateral bend. So you can see as I start to transition, by pulling my lower body, you can see the way my right shoulder starts to drop down and the way that my right elbow starts to operate much more in front of my right hip. Again, it's another beneficial position to be in, because by driving that right elbow means you can hold onto the lag for longer, means you can arguably get closer towards your original plane line as well. And then from there, if you're releasing the lag later, then it's going to be a much more powerful movement. When we watch the pros, you can see the way the head sometimes kind of moves backwards or it stays very central. You know, the feeling with a lot of people is that, okay, I can understand the rotation, but because you're not actually separating the lower from the upper, you end up just getting the feeling like you're smothering the ball. It's really important to understand that to be able to create a lower body rotation and getting the feeling like you're not moving the upper body is where you're going to create that separation, and that's where you'll feel like your head stays very much more centralized. And from there, you're going to create that lower body rotation, getting yourself out the way, start to bend the spine, and what you'll find is it's much easier if you can adopt this sort of position to drive the right elbow in front of the right hip. As ever, hopefully you enjoy the video. Always appreciate a thumbs up and a like. Remember, it's absolutely free to press that subscribe button. Press the little bell icon as well. Just basically means you'll receive notifications every time a new video comes out. What's also absolutely free is to send the swings into the channel. Loads of golfers are taking the opportunity to do this. On my social media platforms is where you can send the swings in. The description for those are in the link below. Basically, send the swings in, I do a little annotation for 60 seconds, and I kind of just suggest what you're doing wrong, what you need to do right, and potentially which videos are going to be best for you to work on. Keep practicing hard, understand the importance of the separation. We'll keep talking hips for a little bit longer on the channel, and I'll catch up with you soon.